Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Seth and Sean Sports Radio here on backsportspage.com. He's over there, and I'm over here. I'm Sean Palmer. You can find us on Facebook at Seth and Sean Sports or Seth at S. Kamens on Twitter and myself at SU Lawyer 2001. And it looks like both of us have absolutely nothing on our walls right now. I mean, you got some blinds, and I got white walls.
Oh, I'm at home. I had to work from home today, and so
I feel like I'm home. I've spent enough time here in the last week. I feel like I'm home. But that, you know what?
Well, then you should have some pictures up. I just have a window dressing in the back.
Dude, I don't even have pictures up at home. I didn't have any pictures.
Well, that's just sad, man.
I know.
That's just sad.
In 3 years, I didn't even have any pictures in Atlanta. So I mean, I got to work on that. I actually have a friend that's an interior designer, and she's coming down in a couple of weeks, and she's gonna.
You have a friend?
Dude, shut the hell up! Like now you're just look. I've had a really, really bad couple of days as far as sports is concerned. Syracuse probably guaranteed, probably going to have their first losing season under Jim Boeheim. Like that is. First of all, the fact that he hasn't had one yet is amazing. Just in the fact that he's been a 40-year coach, and here we are with the first losing season. But it's kind of demoralizing to see that. And then when you look up at the Islanders standings, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened over the weekend as far as the Islanders, they are 14 points out of a playoff spot. They have 4 games in hand, and they basically have to win almost 80% of their games to make the playoffs. And that
what happened this year?
Well, you started with a 13-game road trip.
I remember they were waiting for the arena to open.
Right. Then they suffered the first of the COVID crisis. So they had at one point 9 guys out. And this is before the NHL took their break for COVID. They said, no, Islanders, you guys basically have to play with an AHL lineup. And they did, and they went on a 9-game losing streak because when you play an AHL lineup against an NHL lineup, it really does not depend. It does not matter who you're playing. There's a reason they're in the AHL and not the NHL, and they're behind the 8 ball. They do have, I believe it's about 75% of the rest of the games at home, which is tremendous. But when you have to win 80% of your games, that is really tough. I mean, that is a really tough tale for any team, and that's to get them on the precipice of the playoffs. And that means that some of the other teams, such as the Bruins, have to go into a losing streak, which is possible. I mean, anything is possible, but it is a tall tale. But we'll get to that in a little bit. The first thing.
Tell me the truth. Is anything possible?
Dude, anything is possible. Anything is possible. But I mean, look, we saw that on Sunday. I mean, was there a better 4 games of football in one weekend than we saw this past Sunday? Is it this weekend?
There was a college weekend about 15 years ago, which I kind of thought back to, but which was the one where I think it was the USC Notre Dame, and there was a few. But yeah, I mean, you had 4 games. The least of the games. Look, Cincy Tennessee was an interesting game. It was not a classic, but it was a good game. San Francisco Green Bay was interesting the way it played out.
Look, every single game was a game in the fourth quarter.
Every single game came down to the last play.
Right. Well,
so they were interesting. They kept our attention. But sure. I mean, the two Sunday games. I mean, the Rams Bucks was one of the 15 or 20 best games we've probably ever seen, and that got trumped by the Buffalo, Kansas City, whatever you want to call it. Which there really are no words to describe that. So it was a lot of fun.
There are definitely words to describe that game.
I think that the words that you have versus the words that I have are a little different. My personal favorite was when Kansas City ties the game with no time left, and I'm watching in the bedroom with my wife. And if those of you who don't know, and most of you do, Carly is not a football fan. That's never been really a discussion. So and I'm sitting there screaming because
she's a mascot. To be fair, ladies and gentlemen, she is a mascot fan. So she
She's a
does
fan
like
of the mascots. That is
she
true.
loves the mascots.
And she does like basketball. She's not a football person.
Correct.
I've offered to bring her in on one of my fantasy leagues since I have like 80 of them, but she said no. So whatever. But my favorite response was overtime. Ugh.
Well, to be fair, when they went to overtime, I think I texted you at that point and I said the game's over because
whoever wins, yeah.
The coin toss was going to win because the defenses were just gassed. And it's a shame that the defenses were gassed because first of all, I think Leslie Frazier may have lost a job based on that one game because Buffalo's defense was the number one going into the game.
It was probably like number 23 coming out. Yeah,
right. It was pretty devastating. But look, first of all, you saw Pat Mahomes at his finest, no question, and then you saw Josh Allen at I think I said this a couple of times during the game, Seth. That was my guy. Like I over and over.
It's so funny seeing you so bitter.
And I don't know what I'm more bitter about. Is it that the Bills are so good because they are, or that the Jets should have had this guy? And this is the second guy that the Jets should have had.
You're much more bitter that the Jets should have had this guy.
Or is it the fact that I wanted him 2 years before they even had a chance?
Which I find so interesting because you are not a college football guy by trade.
No.
You're not.
And I was remarking this to my friend Ben Kuby, who's also a Jets fan, and we watched the game together down here. And I said, his sophomore year, the beginning of his sophomore year, I watched a game on the West Coast. It was probably 1 o'clock in the morning when I should have been asleep, and Seth was just entering his phase of being awake because that's what Seth does during college football games. And Carly's asleep, so that helps. In that I said, this guy makes all the throws. This is my new Brett Favre. This is the guy I want. And I came on the show, I believe it was that week, and I said, that's the guy I want. And I didn't think we'd be in a position to get him.
You would have been extraordinary. And the funny thing is, you would have never had to trade up.
Nope.
You would have been able to stay at 6, keep your 3 second-round picks.
Yep.
And you would have gotten what I think is a faster Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
I mean, he is big and strong. Like, he's not Favre. He's 6'5", 240 and runs a 4.6.
Okay, so the Favre comparison comes from being his arm. He can make – how many quarterbacks out there can make all the throws and make it – and when I say all the throws, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking more about the outs, right? I'm talking about you're going across your body and you have enough power to make those. I think there are probably 4 or 5 in the pro game right now that can make all those throws, maybe 6. Rodgers can make all the throws, right? Mahomes can make all the throws. Look,
Mahomes can make all the throws, plus about 5 or 6 that we've never.
So Brady probably can still make all the throws. But we haven't seen those out routes very often. He throws a lot more across the middle than he does that out route. And certainly not across his body anymore. He used to do that. So let's put him in there too. Deshaun Watson, he could probably make those throws. So let's count him as 4. But we haven't seen Deshaun Watson in 2 years, so who knows what he can do, right? Who else? Seth, who else? Who else is making those throws?
Herbert.
Yeah, okay. Herbert, maybe Derek Carr. Derek Carr's got a pretty good arm.
Stafford.
Stafford can make the throws.
There's 10 that the guys have such ridiculous arms at this point.
True.
But look, that throw to Gabriel Davis, that thing must have been going about as fast as a Roger Clemens fastball. Yes, I quoted Roger Clemens because we have to.
We'll get to Roger Clemens in a second, but yeah,
that thing was like a slingshot out of his arm.
Yep.
And look, everyone's crushing Sean McDermott on the you didn't squib the kick. And yeah, you probably should have. But let's be honest, nobody in their right mind thought that you could drive 45 yards in 13 seconds.
Well, part of it is also what would have happened if they returned the kick?
Yeah.
right? What if they returned it to the 45-yard line and then all he needed was one play?
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yep.
And that's why I hate some of these shows where it's so easy to second guess something like that. Like certain things are like the Mike McCarthy with Prescott was a horrible call. That's not a hindsight call. That's a in the midst. What are you thinking call? If you have to think a couple minutes, because I can guarantee you that 99% of people who were crushing McDermott on that call did not think of squibbing. Weren't concerned with squibbing it when it happened. They just weren't. So we're now on to.
It did give us an instant classic. Look,
it was incredible.
It was
the last 5 minutes of that game are unlike anything I can ever remember seeing.
But so one of the terms that I cannot stand, and announcers use it, radio hosts use it, and this is in and out of sports.
Do I use it?
You might. I hate the word unbelievable. I cannot stand it.
Really?
Because I cannot. First of all, I believe it is completely overused. Second of all, everything is unbelievable until it's in motion, and then why can't you believe it? Like, you say that that's an unbelievable game. Well, it's not an unbelievable. You believe it happened. Like, the concept of the word, it's believable. If you want to say it's unbelievable to think that there's a unicorn outside, yeah, I could go with that. There are no unicorns. At least if it's unbelievable for you to walk off the face of the earth, literally walk off. Well, unless your name is Kyrie Irving, then it is unbelievable to do that. Or Jim Rice with not Jim Rice, Carl Everett with Aliens. I mean,
I was going to say I didn't know where Jim Rice was coming.
Not Jim Rice, excuse me. But there are unbelievable occurrences, and then there are just flat out amazing occurrences. And this was an amazing game, and you take it for what it was.
Are you really differentiate? You're spending our valuable radio time talking about the difference between unbelievable and amazing?
Look, I'm looking at the eye in the top left corner where it says 0 viewers right now. I'm doing okay with this. I'm all right with this. And
thank you, Randy, for all the media coverage. We appreciate it.
Let me be clear, Seth and somebody at work, and I'm actually obviously at work right now. Somebody at work asked me the other day, "Why do you do this show?" And we don't do it for the eyeballs. Let's be fair, right? Seth and I started this show. We're now in our 11th season, I think.
10th year, 11th year, or something like
that.
Yeah,
I think it was July. I think it was November 2011 when I moved down to New York that we started this show. So we're in our 11.5 years, which is to do anything for 11 and a half years consistently is some sort of an accomplishment. And so we don't do this for the eyeballs. Or for the listeners, which we used to do on Blog Talk Radio. We do it because Seth and I, first of all, enjoy it. We take an hour out of our day in which we would probably just be talking on the phone anyway and having this conversation.
Agreed.
And if there are people that enjoy listening to us or watching us, more power to them. We love it. And we'd love to have more, and we'd love to have people that chime in, the Mark Rubens of the world or the Mitch Byers of the world or even the Nabate Isles of the world. If you guys would like
I was going to throw in the Zach Ziskins of the world.
Zach Ziskins of the world as well. Any of you guys, look, we appreciate you listening. We really do. But we really don't care. Like, at the end of the day, we're going to keep doing this whether we have 0 eyeballs or 1,000 eyeballs because we flat out enjoy doing it. So
it's always been the one constant. It sounds like this is like the end of our career.
And it's not. We're not signing off by any stretch, but I thought it was important, especially since you said I was alienating the 0 listeners that are on the show right now. That we just make it out. Look, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We really do, and we would love to have more of you. So we've never tried to monetize this. We never. I won't say we never will, but look, if Sirius offers us our own show, we're going to monetize it.
Well, you do realize that we've been offered to join the Gary Aids Media Network, right?
I did not know that. Maybe we should do that.
He's supposed to reach out, but apparently him and Randy are having these discussions, and that's just not the right way for this to go.
Well, just to be clear, Gary Aid hosts another show on his radio network, and Seth and I are both guests at some point. Generally, I'm on Thursdays at 10:34, and I'm not sure what time you're on.
I'm like this show. I switch around whenever.
I think it varies a lot, but we give our 10 to 15 minute blip, and then we're out. So maybe one time we'll have Gary on the show. He can guest on our show the same way we guest on his.
Probably maybe the basketball playoff seems like a good time for Gary.
Yeah, and we can go through his top 100 where he doesn't like anybody. But anyway, so
he just doesn't like Michael. If you remember, I don't remember, for those of you so he did a top 75. I did a top 75, and I had not. Michael. You did not. I had Michael number 1, and I'm actually reading the Athletic top 75, which is really good to read. I don't know if I agree with all of it, but it's really good to read.
It's like Pazanski's, right? I mean,
yeah.
Look, the
Pazanski
Athletic
said actually the football game was the best he's ever seen.
And that's not surprising because it's the best football game I ever saw. I mean, here's the thing. You and I did not have a vested interest in this game.
No.
So when we say it's the best game, look, the best game you ever saw probably when you talk about it with your heart is a Giant Super Bowl win, if I had to guess, right? And the best game I ever saw, well, I don't have one of those. So, I mean.
You have Syracuse, Kansas.
Right. But my point is football game, right? The best football game I ever saw. That's probably there, along with the Titans and Bills in the
2000 wild card.
Comeback from Frank Reich. Yeah, that's in there too. I mean, I remember exactly where I was watching that game. The Giants-Bills Super Bowl was
wonderful.
An amazing. Well, it was more wonderful for you than it was for me, but yes,
it was great defensive. It was an amazing. It was an amazing defensive game. It was not an amazing game to watch.
So my boss and I were talking about this though. That the game on Sunday, and we're circling back, obviously, was the equivalent to a 10-9 baseball game. That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy a 10-9 baseball game? Because I sure as hell don't. There is no part of it.
Am I supposed to enjoy baseball?
Oh, come on. Even let's say a 10-9, a 6-5 hockey game. Do you, or even a 5-4 soccer game? Let's put it in your soccer EPL.
Right. Fine. Look, I think you enjoy it if the last 4 goals are scored in the last 3 minutes.
Okay.
You enjoy it. That's why when you said it's the greatest game you've ever seen, the first half wasn't great. Like it was a good game. It wasn't great.
Well, the first half was defense. The second half was offense. The third quarter
was good. It wasn't great. The fourth quarter was great.
Yeah. Look, top to bottom, probably not the best game ever.
No.
But you'll never see a game that's consistently like that one. Also, you'd have 196 being the final score.
No, I think it's one of the more unforgettable games.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll ever see.
Thank you for not using unbelievable in there. I appreciate it.
I did not use unbelievable.
I said thank you for not using it.
Unforgettable.
Thank you, Nat King Cole. Anyway, oh my God. Anyways, but the fact is, look, do you enjoy a 6-5 hockey game? 6-5 soccer game?
I do.
Okay.
I also enjoy a 2-1. I also enjoy a 3-2 soccer game.
Because
I do not enjoy a 0-0 soccer game.
I do not enjoy a 10-9 baseball game. I find that is, first of all, it's the longest game of all time.
Yeah, I would be asleep by the 4th inning.
Right. That's number one. Number two, I think that baseball pitching to me is more exciting than hitting. I know Bud Selig does not approve, and neither does Rob Manfred. They do not agree with me on this, but I believe a 1-0 no-hitter is far more exciting than a 10-9 home run fest. I always have. I think good pitching outlasts good hitting, and that's why I think I like the playoffs, because it's generally pretty good pitching. But that's what that was the other day, was a 10-9 slugfest. You're absolutely right in the fact that the fourth quarter, you couldn't play at that level for 4 quarters. I mean, you could have one quarterback.
The closest we've ever seen to that was the Chiefs-Rams game on a Monday night 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
54-51. And let's be honest, that was a lot of fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun to watch, but I didn't. I would have look, we've had a couple of 6-3 games, and I remember particularly the Jets losing 9-6 to Dean Biasucci's 3 field goals, and that was not an enjoyable game to watch. But that was ineptitude. That wasn't good defense. If you had 2 really good defensive teams that caused 10 punts in a game, I'd be okay with that. I think I'd actually enjoy that, but not due to ineptitude, due to superior defense. And so this week we have the Rams, who I did pick to win last week. And
did I?
I believe you did. And I had the 49ers, who I did pick to win last week, who you did not. And what do you see in it? Look, Deebo Samuel has become the rock star, right, of that 49ers offense. But to me, I said it last week. I'll say it again. I said it to my boss. The 49ers are the Giants with Eli Manning. They just are. Every part of that game, every part of that team reminds me of exactly what you got out of the Giants. And because of that, I'm going to pick them to win this week too.
I think they are also. The Rams team, while more talented,
absolutely
scares the crap out of me.
Well, Jalen Ramsey, we saw last week, got burned how many times? I mean, paying $20 million to a number 1 cornerback to sit on an island when that island is inhabited by 6 other people does not help very much. No. It's a lot of cap room spent on a cornerback.
I think you have the Rams. Look, San Francisco's beaten the Rams 6 times in a row. And that's what's been forgotten is not only is the Rams literally tried to give the Buccaneers this game.
Yep.
The Cam Akers fumbles, the Stafford fumble. They just took their foot off the gas. There's no other way to put it in the second half. And Aaron Donald was sensational, but they got very lucky. Let's call it what it is, and not in a bad way, but most of the time you're not completing a 60-yard pass with 5 seconds left in a tie game.
You're not?
You're not playing a defense that's going to allow one-on-one coverage of the best receiver in football against a safety.
No disagreement here.
Yeah. So talk about not possibly helping your head coaching prospects, Todd Bowles.
Yeah, it was not good. It was ungood. The difference is that Todd Bowles has a chance to redeem himself while Leslie Frazier does not. I don't think Todd Bowles was getting one of those jobs anyway. And we can get into those jobs in a second. But it's becoming a lot harder for defensive coaches to get jobs.
That's why, as a Giant fan, I'm rooting for DeBoll. If they're not interviewing any other offensive now look, we've had 2 offensive coordinators in Shermer and McAdoo, which have pretty much crapped the bed. But the practicality is this. If you bring in a defensive coach and you make Ken Dorsey your offensive coordinator, let's just say, and Dorsey somehow gets the Giants to a top 10 offensive game next year, he's going to be a head coach in a year.
Yep.
So I don't know how you can go defensive coordinator when you're not to head coach, when you're not going to be able to keep an offensive coordinator if he does his job well.
And today, I'm not sure if you saw this, what John Mara said. And I'm paraphrasing here.
I just saw that they're keeping Daniel Jones.
No, but what he said about keeping Daniel Jones, he goes, and I'm paraphrasing, we have not helped this guy one bit. We have done everything to destroy him. And they're not wrong.
No, this has been why I don't understand the vitriol that he's dealt with.
It's funny how you and I were going to come up with that same word of vitriol. So yeah. I was just about to say that. Yeah.
And my feeling is, look, if you bring in the ball from Buffalo, you bring in a Trubisky, and you see if Daniel Jones, there's going to be continuity. You can't give Daniel Jones the fifth year option, obviously, but you certainly give him a shot. And you've had no chance for him to. I just don't understand it. I don't understand the Russell Wilson discussion. I don't
Well, he
understand.
already Mara already said no to Wilson today.
Oh, did he? I knew he said
said
no to Watson. I didn't know he said no to
100.
Wilson.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. He said no to Watson, not
Well, he said
Wilson.
no to Watson for a different reason.
Well, maybe. Look, at the end of the day, every single time that a owner, or I'll say a general manager, brings up the salary cap as a detriment to making this happen, I think it's BS. I think it's complete BS. You want to play salary cap games? Look at Pittsburgh, right? They've been playing kick the can, right? You can do Drew
Pittsburgh or
Brees.
New Orleans?
I just said New Orleans too. But before Roethlisberger's, not before this year, they were kicking the can down the hill too. If you want a guy, if you seriously want Russell Wilson, if you seriously want Aaron Rodgers, and you want to give him $50 million, you find a way, right? I mean, you can. I don't ever want to hear that salary cap problems are the things that cause you not to get the player that you want, because there are certainly ways to make it happen, especially when you have non-guaranteed contracts. Like, if you want to go to the NBA and say you can't make something happen, that's something entirely different. Those are guaranteed contracts, which you can't just cut a guy. You can't restructure a guy. You can't give him a bonus and lower that cap number. If you wanted to with Russell Wilson, let's say he's got $35 million. Let's use Deshaun Watson because it's just easier. Deshaun Watson has a $35 million cap hit next year. If you wanted to, you're acquiring 3 years of his contract. Well, extend him 2 more years and lower that cap hit. I mean, if you're going to spend the capital, both salary cap wise and draft choice wise and player wise, he's not your quarterback for 2 years. He's your quarterback for 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or not, right? If you're acquiring Russell Wilson, you're not acquiring him for 2 years and then say goodbye.
Right. The hope is he's got 5 years left.
So you go and extend him and lower that cap.
If you were the Giants, would you trade 3 first-round picks and Daniel Jones for Russell Wilson?
Daniel Jones and 3 first-round picks. Are you giving up both this year?
Say 1 this year.
So you're giving up this year, next year, and the year after? Not a chance.
Me either.
Nope.
You have no offensive line. This all goes back to you have no offensive line.
Now, if Daniel Jones counts as one of those picks, then yes. I'll give up Wilson, the second pick this year, and another first. Yeah, I do that. I'm sorry, Jones, the second first this year, and another first. Yeah, I do it. You draft your lineman with that pick, whatever that pick is. It's the 5 pick, right? You'll get Evan Neal, or you get the guy from Purdue, or
from NC State.
Purdue? Sorry, NC State. You'll get an offensive lineman, and that's where you go with it. Now, I'm not sure Daniel Jones counts as that first round pick, and if he doesn't, what do you have to do to sub in? And is that if it's another first, I don't do it. If it's a third, I do it in a heartbeat. Again, this is a matter of securing you. Remember, Russell Wilson has 2 more years in that contract too. It's not a huge contract, meaning you're going to have to pay him again real soon. So you have to take that into account as well. And just to stop for a second, thank you very much to the one listener who now just went away. We did have one. My question to you is, so you want Dable or DeBall or however you pronounce it?
I do.
You want that guy. Okay. By the way, Ken Dorsey will not be following. He will be elevated to the
Buffalo offensive coordinator position.
So if your hopes are springing on Dorsey signing him, and that's what Dorsey.
No, I don't know why. No, my gut is. I mean, the logic says if you have the chance to be the offensive coordinator for the Bills or the offensive coordinator for the Giants, you're going to be the offensive.
Josh Allen, Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
You're
going to be the offensive coordinator for the Bills. So I don't really get there, but that seems to be what the Giants fans are. Again, they're Giants fans, so they're biased. So that they think it's going to be Dable Dorsey,
Dorsey.
and then Martindale from Baltimore.
Well, Martindale's fine.
He's a free agent. That's distinctly possible.
Yeah. By the way, congratulations to Ben McAdoo for getting a new job.
I do like the idea that Ben McAdoo is going to save Matt Rule's job.
And I love the fact that he's now the offensive coordinator for Sam Darnold. That makes it even. I mean, it just all comes in a circle, right? I mean, it's pretty funny, but we got some other jobs that are open, right? You still got Chicago. Where does Brian Flores land? Because he's got to land somewhere, right?
Oh yeah.
Chicago. I mean, from what understanding, Jim Caldwell's now in the mix.
Well, Jim Caldwell's been in the mix all along in Chicago.
No, but I mean, he hasn't been in the mix in 2 years, and now he's back in the mix.
He's in the mix in Jacksonville too. I don't know where Flores, because the problem is it wasn't that they fired Flores because of record. They fired Flores because of an inability to get along with his quarterback and his GM. And I think that's going to give a lot of people pause. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Houston. New England guy, Cesario is the GM. You know, they'll give him a long-term contract because they know that team is 3-4 years away from relevancy.
If that. That team is not only irrelevant, but doesn't have draft picks.
Perfect combination.
No, I feel so. And they're not going to have a quarterback, but they may have draft picks if they trade.
I don't think they're. I think Davis Mills they'll give Davis Mills the shot this year. He wasn't terrible last year.
Look, I'm a big fan, right? After what he did for us, I'm a pretty big fan of Davis Mills. He will not be kept, mind you. But I am a big fan. But okay, so you're picking San Francisco against the Rams, and what about the Chiefs versus Cincinnati?
Kansas City's win. I'd love to see Cincy win. Kansas City's winning the game.
Are they winning it in the fourth quarter, or are they winning it way earlier than that?
I think it's around. I think they win 31-20. 31-17, something like that. I don't think it's that close. I think Kansas City is going to destroy Cincy's offensive line.
Okay.
Tennessee had nine, I believe had 9 sacks. And let's be honest, Jeff Simmons is really good, but he's never shown anything quite like this. And you're going against Frank Clark, and you're going against Melvin Ingram, and they're going against a really good defensive coordinator in Spagnuolo. I think they're going to have a problem. I would love to see Cincy do it. I don't see it.
No, and I totally get that. 100% understand that. And look, we're both rooting for Cincy, right? I mean,
I always root for Cincy. That's the problem with being my NFL teams. It's the Giants, the Jets, and then the Bengals. It has not been a fun trio for the last. You're
talking to a Jets fan, right? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, your life is miserable. I'm not caring.
We're actually having this conversation. Come on now.
No, your life is miserable.
Thanks for sharing. But the fact of the matter is, look, it hopefully it will be just as interesting a game. Like that. That's basically what I'm hoping for. I would. When you're looking at Kansas City and Cincinnati, it's got to be an offensive blowout, an offensive shootout. Because if it's not going to be an interesting game whatsoever. But that might happen. So who knows?
Cincinnati beat Kansas City a month ago.
Correct.
It's not beyond the realm of this happening. I just find it unlikely.
Also correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it will be. Yeah. So if you had to give a higher combination score, is it the AFC or the NFC game?
AFC.
By a lot?
Yeah, I think the NFC is going to be 24-17, 24-20. I think the AFC will be about 10 points higher.
All right.
Are you going on DraftKings and betting a parlay with us?
Yes, absolutely. No, I ladies and gentlemen, I do not bet on football. I do my picks. I do my picks on a weekly basis, but I do not bet on strict games until the Super Bowl. It is. I could say it's like coming to America, not coming to Trading Places. It's against my religion, but no, it has nothing to do with my religion. It's just an addiction I don't need. More than anything else, it's an addiction I don't need. Okay, so yesterday predictions were correct. Big Papi is the only Hall of Fame, right? The only one elected into the Hall of Fame. Tim Kirchin makes it from the broadcast wing, and Kurt Schilling surprisingly falls short yet again. It is a misconception, and I think it's appropriate to say that right now, that these guys cannot make the Hall of Fame, because they all can.
Yes.
And in fact, they all can this very year, in the fact that there is the Veterans Committee coming up for the time period in which, surprisingly, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Kurt Schilling, Mark McGwire, all these guys, a couple of years ago, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame broke out their Veterans Committee. So every year is a different time period. The golden age, the 60s and 70s, the 80s and 90s, 90s, 2000s, and the 90s, 2000s are coming up. And so those three or four or five players, including Sammy Sosa, will be on the ticket this year. They got a better shot at winning now with these guys. I still don't think they get it, because I think you have way too many curmudgeons that say not on my lawn.
There's 16 votes, and you need 12. Well, you said you wouldn't vote for them, and so are you a curmudgeon?
I got to tell you, I have changed my tune.
Didn't you yell at me last week about me doing this?
I did. I don't think I yelled at you. I just said...
I cried a little inside.
Yeah. You know, I'm not sure if I changed my tune because it's not the writers. Like, I think I'm changing my tune because it's the vets more than it is the writers. And I'm not sure why, but I think it was Jeff Passan convinced me with one thing.
He's a museum. I saw exactly what he said.
How do you tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, and I'm not saying Sosa should be in, because I don't believe he should, Mark McGwire, or Kurt Schilling? How do you tell the story of baseball? And you can't. You fundamentally cannot tell the story of Major League Baseball without saying Barry Bonds has the most home runs in Major League Baseball history. It's that simple.
Yeah, I actually heard Passan say the same thing and kind of felt the same way.
And it's disturbing to me in some ways, because I remember going to the Hall of Fame, and I love Cooperstown. Surprisingly, I love history and I love baseball, and I'm going to love sitting in a museum for 4 hours learning everything about baseball and history. But I love going there, and I love learning about it. It's one of my probably top 10 places in the world to go, because it told me a story. I remember seeing the Jimmy Fox wall, which is in A League of Their Own, except it says Jimmy Dugan. I remember seeing the first card of Honus Wagner, the T206, T216, I think it is.
T216, yes.
And seeing how small that was, and learning why it's so valuable. How do you tell the history of baseball without talking about Barry Bonds? I don't think there is a way to do it. And that you may call me hypocritical. I'm okay with that. I also have come over to the side, surprisingly, that there are already steroid people in the Hall of Fame.
We've talked
now,
about it.
Here's the thing, too. Am I only doing this because he didn't get in? And am I only doing this because it's past the time? And I don't know the answer to that. If Bonds was self-admittedly, if Bonds and Clemens were on the ballot next year, would I be taking this stance today? And I
Probably
don't know.
not.
I don't know the answer to that question. Look, Seth, my favorite player in the last 20 years was Mike Piazza. And my favorite player that was not a Met was Jeff Bagwell. And both of them have been accused of taking steroids at some point in their career. And it was before testing. So can I make the claim that there are no steroid, and this is not an accusation about Bagwell or an accusation about Piazza, but can I make the claim that there are no steroid users in the Hall of Fame with accuracy? No, of course not. And can I make the claim that nobody used amphetamines in baseball before any of these guys? Of course not. We know that's not true.
Plus, even if they weren't, you have the greenies.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. Those are the amphetamines. I mean, we know that's not true. Right. So really, what are we talking about here? We're talking about two players that epitomized what baseball were. And they should be recognized for doing what they did, but also in the negative, told what they did, right? I mean, no two players epitomize the steroid era more than X and Y. And if one day it comes out that Tom Brady was using some clear cream or whatever to get in his TB12 exercise regimen, it should be said the same thing.
So you're okay with A-Rod getting in?
Yeah, I think I have to be. Also, I'd be a real hypocrite right now over the last couple of days. Yeah, I mean, look, the numbers speak for themselves. And next year, I hope that I'll have the same opinion that I have today. It'll give me another 363 days to think about it. But I think I have to go that route. It's what they did on the field, not necessarily how they got there, because everybody if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? If you're not cheating, a foul is not a foul unless the referee blows his or her whistle.
Yep.
I quote Blue Chips way too much when it comes to that line. I did like the fact that Scott Rowland and Todd Helton did jump up a little bit more. And I think that those two are the next two that make it in. And Billy Wagner, too, by the way.
Wagner did well this one?
He got over 50%, I believe. So it's hold on, I can tell you exactly what he did. Baseball Hall. Oh, there it is, results. So here we go. So Ortiz gets in at 77%, which I thought was about where I thought he would be.
I thought he'd be a little bit higher, to be honest. I thought he was more of a no-brainer.
See, and to me, I thought that the DH thing was going to be held against him. I still do. And I understand that some people believe DH is a position. I get it. It is. But you're still not playing half the field, and that's a problem for me.
Right, but he was also – you may be held to a higher standard as a DH than you would be at any other position.
Correct.
But we've only had two DHs in the history of Major League Baseball make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So Ortiz gets 77%, Bonds gets 66%, and Clemens gets 65%, which is no different than
I want to know who voted for Bonds but didn't vote for Clemens.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I never even thought about that. Actually, 3 people did. Well, there are 3 different votes. It doesn't necessarily mean that the same people voted for both either. Right?
How are you differentiating between voting for Clemens or voting for Bonds?
So maybe there's who didn't vote for Clemens but did for Bonds? Maybe they made this public. Nope. I do not see anything that made it public. So don't know. Okay, well, we'll do some more research next week. Maybe we can see who that is. Roland gets 63%, so he definitely jumped up.
Yep.
Schilling gets 58%, and last year he got over 70%. So when he said, "Please take me off the ballot," well, some people did. Helton jumps to 52, Wagner jumps to 51. Andrew Jones gets 41%. Sheffield gets 40.6. An interesting historical note. When you play with one team, you get more ballots.
Is that what the consensus is?
That's the consensus. So you got guys like Schilling and Sheffield that played with. I mean, Sheffield played with like 8 teams.
Yeah.
Schilling played with, I believe, 4: Houston, Baltimore, Red Sox, Arizona, and the Phillies.
How about Philly?
Yeah, 5. So he played with 5 teams. Meanwhile, Helton plays with 1. Right. Wagner plays with 3. Mets, Phillies, and Houston. Yeah. Helton plays with 1. Roland plays with 2. So Jeff Kent, 32%. A-Rod, 34. Manny, 28. Omar Vizquel was over 50, and now he's at 23. And Sammy Sosa goes to 18.5.
I'll be fair. I really didn't think Omar Vizquel was a Hall of Famer before this.
Oh, I know. And here's the thing about Sosa, though. Sosa, to me, Sosa not only cheated, but he cheated and cheated and cheated, right? I mean, the corked bat.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a whole lot for Sosa. And Pettit gets 10.6. Jimmy Rollins doesn't fall off, which I think, like I said, I think Jimmy Rollins is going to start making an upward climb once you get some of these guys off the ballot, such as Schilling and Bonds and Clemens. You'll have 3 more votes.
Well, they're off the ballot regardless.
No, but I'm saying now you have 3 because you have the vote of 10. Certain people may have voted for Clemens and Bonds that now have a vote to spare, and they may give that to Jimmy Rollins. I think Rollins is going to make a sizable jump next year. Sizable.
Who's on the ballot next year?
Hold on. May 23. Carlos Beltran. Looking at the newbies. Nobody else. I mean, nobody else that's going to make a dent.
I guess Beltran's a Hall of Famer.
Beltran's a Hall of Famer, my friend. Beltran's a Hall of Famer for what? And again, do you hold what he did in Houston against him with the garbage cans?
The garbage can.
But I mean, Beltran had 435 home runs, 312 steals. I think there are only 3 or 4 players that have done that. 2,700 hits. Look, he never won MVP. He's a little bit of an accumulator, right? We talked about that.
Did he ever come close to the MVP?
With the Mets, he finished 4th. I mean, look, he had 41 homers, 116 RBIs with the Mets. The thing about him is that he never led the league in anything. Yeah. Anything. And he played for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams.
Played for 21 years.
Yep. 7 teams. I mean, he won a bunch of Gold Gloves, if I recall. Hold on, Gold Gloves. He won 3 Gold Gloves. He was in 9 All-Star games. His WAR, so average WAR. So Hall of Fame statistics, according to Baseball Reference, the black ink, he got a hole of 1. And that is basically 4 points. So again, batting statistics, if you lead the league, he hasn't led the league in anything. So he gets a 1. The gray ink, the Hall of Fame average Hall of Famer is 144. He's a 76. And that counts top 10 appearances in those categories, of which, again, he did none. You go to the Hall of Fame monitor.
He did lead the league in games played in 2002. Does that count?
No. Hall of Fame monitor is basically a Bill James creation, which says certain plateaus, right? You hit 40 home runs, you hit 100 RBIs. He is in the Hall of Fame monitor stat. So likely Hall of Famer is 100. He's at 126. The Jaws, where basically you're looking at a 7-year peak. The average Hall of Famer is 44.7.
And that's exactly he's 44.4.
He's 44.4. He's there. Similarity scores, I love these. Andre Dawson, Billy Williams, Al Kaline, Tony Perez, Gary Sheffield, Dave Winfield, Chipper Jones.
Well, there's 3 automatic out of that 10. There's 3 automatic Hall of Famers,
If
and
any. Well,
no,
Winfield, Chipper, and Al Kaline. Yep, you
yeah,
have 3.
those are my
Yep.
3.
Yep, because Billy Williams got in, I believe, on the veterans.
You got in on veterans.
Dawson definitely was not a slam dunk Hall of Famer, even though I thought he was. But injuries robbed him. But yeah, I think you're right. And Perez got in, I think, on the last ballot. Okay, we got 9 minutes left, and I think I want to use some of this time. So I said it was a tough weekend, and it wasn't necessarily a tough weekend just because of the wins and losses, but bigger loss for me, bigger loss for my family. And I view my family as the Long Island family that I have. Both those that went to games and those that did not go to games in the Nassau Coliseum. It's the first of the guys that passed away, and that was Clark Gillies. And Clark Gillies, Jethro, whatever you want to call him, Clarky. My grandfather called him the Oaf. We had the Oafette, by the way, too. We had both the Oaf and the Oafette. Gord Lane was the Oafette. I said on Facebook we never saw him at his prime. I never saw him at his prime. His prime was in the late 70s and early 80s. But the one thing you say about him, along with Butch Goring and Bob Nystrom, is no matter how good or how bad the Islanders were, he was the face of that franchise, always around the Coliseum, always willing to shake your hand, take a picture with you, be there, be one of the guys. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of tearing up right now. I was in a horrible mood all weekend. It was a pit in my stomach, and it still is. Because, look, Seth, we're old. It's coming to grips with that. And look, my grandfather passed away 5 years ago. My mom is 70 years old. Seth's parents are around the same age as my mom. And we see these people, and we grew up with these people. And Clark Gillies was 68 years old. And it kind of makes you feel a little mortal. And it kind of makes you feel like your youth is gone more than anything else that I can think of. And look, Clark Gillies was a great player, but he was more a great person. And his $1 million foundation across Long Island for cancer was immeasurable. I won't say unbelievable. It was immeasurable to that community. And for him to pass away, it was a very aggressive form of cancer. He actually was at the UBS opening day, which was November 20th. He had been seen since. I got to tell you, there are words that I can use that I said that morning when I found out, but none of them I would want to repeat. It was a very sobering thought to find out that one of my family had passed away. And yeah, called my brothers, did the whole thing, the reminiscing. And my younger brother said it best. Look, we never saw him at his prime. My brother Jay is 2 years younger than me, so he really didn't remember most of the 4 straight Stanley Cups, although we were there for every game. I was anyway. But he was always there. And it's hard when you have a guy that's always there. And I'm sure, Seth, when the Yankees of that generation pass away, you'll probably feel the same way. When the Winfields or the Mattinglys, because that was your team growing up, or the Giants. It is a very hard, sobering thought that this is the first of many that are coming down the path, and that's life, right? Life and death in the circle, but it's very difficult.
Well, I mean, not that I had as much of a personal relationship
to the player I'm going to bring up, but we're talking about death. This is the 2-year anniversary of the crash of Kobe Bryant's crash.
Wow.
Which I forget if you called me or I called you while I was on the Peloton watching the Maryland-Wisconsin game.
You texted me. Wow, I did not realize that it was 2 years today.
2 years today.
Another sobering thought.
Yeah, and I mean, generationally, he's the first great player of our generation to die. Wow. I didn't see him. He wasn't an idol. He wasn't, to me, a top 2 or 3 shooting. He wasn't a top 2 shooting guard. I had him a little bit lower than everyone else did. But he really was the face of the NBA. He had gone from a cocky rookie to a really hated player to the issue in Colorado to he was a champion by that point, to leading the championship teams in 08 and 10, to kind of the great vet, for lack of a better term, to the elder statesman that everyone looked up to by the end of his career. And, someone with an extraordinary interest in the things, pretty much the world around him beyond just basketball, and everything he was doing outside of that. And of course, he'd been retired for a year or two by that point. It's that, like, for my father, it was Mantle. Mantle dying was the first one for him. Not the first one for him, because he died in the 80s or 90s, I forget when. But was the sobering. I think for us, our generation, the sobering was Bryant.
Yeah.
Wow,
I did.
We'll see more. It was Reggie White, as great as Reggie White was, and Reggie White was probably better in his sport than Kobe was in his. It didn't have the same impact, maybe because he died when we were 21, 22, 23, something like that. But it felt like we grew up with Kobe. And, Kobe died when he was 40. I was 43. So were you. It kind of left it leaves a weird sore spot, because when we see this happen to LeBron and to Brady and whoever else it is, that is our generation. That is the generation that we became. We knew we were diehards before then, but that's the generation where we understood the greatness. I guess when it's Michael, but to see Kobe have to deal with that, not have to deal with that, excuse me, but to see Kobe at age 40 go down, and again 2 years later, it's still a little weird to think about. And I don't want to say hard to swallow, because that's the wrong way to put it, but man, it's not easy to think about.
No, they're sobering thoughts, right? So these are people that Kobe's definitely there. I will tell you, when Kevin Garnett passes away, which obviously he will, either before or after us, he is our age, right? I always think about Kevin Garnett, because he was drafted out of high school the same year we graduated high school, and that's why I associate with him. But when we get to some of those players, which we grew up with, Clark Gillies notwithstanding, we get to the younger generation, the mid-generation, the Jeff Bagwells, the Chipper Jones, which may be a little bit older than us, but not as young as us. It's just going to continue down that path. Maybe Chipper is our age. I don't even know. It may be. But anyway, so next week we'll have a Super Bowl.
We're going to end on this happy note.
Yeah, well, next week we'll have a Super Bowl matchup, right? More importantly, next week we're going to run through a little bit of the college basketball, because we haven't given. What? Yeah, exactly. We haven't given much thought to it, quite frankly, this year.
Well, because our teams stink.
Well, but we should at least alert people as to what teams are doing well, because there are some. I just don't know them.
So I know them. They're just not Maryland or Syracuse.
Yeah. So if you're interested in college basketball next week, please tune in. We'll go through a little bit of our we're not going to go through a Super Bowl preview, but we do have a trade deadline preview coming up in the NBA. So we'll talk what teams might need some changes and how they go about getting. For Seth Kamens, who's over there, I'm Sean Palmer over here, Seth and Sean Sports Radio. This was a lot of fun for the 0 or 1 eye that looked at us today. And we hope you catch us on the podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know on Facebook or Twitter. We'll have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Adios.